It's probably one of the most controversial topics out there, and today we're going to talk about it. Student loan forgiveness. Where does everything stand, and what are my thoughts? And if you're new to the channel, welcome. I'm Tim Fraticelli. I'm a physical therapist and financial planner, and on this channel, we love talking about ways to improve your financial health. So be sure to subscribe to the channel and to give this video a little stimulus by hitting the like button. Okay, so you've heard the promise of Joe Biden that he will ask Congress to immediately cancel $10,000 in student loan debt per borrower in response to the COVID crisis. Well, we haven't seen that happen yet, but there's still continued momentum from Democratic leaders Schumer and Warren to have the president forgive up to $50,000 of student loans with just a stroke of a pen. But just this past week on February 4th, 2021, Schumer again pressed the Biden administration to cancel $50,000 in student loan debt for every student in the country. His argument is that student loans are keeping people from, quote, buying cars, going on vacations, from starting families, and getting the jobs that they want to get. And I'm not here to argue against any of those things. Those are just what he said. But if you have student loans, I'm curious to hear if you feel the same way. Have your student loans kept you from doing any of those things? Let me know in the comments. But while the promise of student loan forgiveness can be traced all the way back to the campaign trail this past year, we still have yet to see anything happen, and it brings up a couple of really good questions. Question one is this: can Joe Biden actually cancel $50,000 of student loans with the stroke of his pen? Now, this argument is made based on the idea that the Higher Education Act of 1965 allows this. Supporters argue that Congress already has granted the Secretary of Education the legal authority to broadly cancel student loan debt under Section 432A of the Higher Education Act of 1965. Now, the Higher Education Act of 1965 grants the Secretary the authority to modify, compromise, waive, or release any right, title, claim, lien, or demand, however required, including any equity or any right of redemption. The Department of Education has used this authority to provide relief for student loans, federal student loan borrowers during the COVID-19 pandemic by changing the interest rate and the required payment to zero. So okay, even if we can agree that Biden can forgive $50,000 with the stroke of his pen, it doesn't mean that he will. In fact, he's on record in saying that he is in favor of forgiving $10,000 in student loans, but he doesn't feel like he can or should forgive $50,000 in student loans. And as of now, in early February 2021, there's no inclusion of any student loan forgiveness in the $1.9 trillion COVID stimulus package. Also, I've yet to find why this figure of $50,000 keeps coming up. There's no specific amount in the Higher Education Act, which is probably why there are folks out there like Bernie Sanders who just think we should cancel all student loans completely. But here's the problem. We know that our higher education system is messed up here, and that colleges have been inflating tuition drastically for the past 20 years. And forgiving student loans isn't going to fix that problem. If anything, it might encourage more reckless behavior by schools by charging exorbitant prices for education because, well, it'll just be forgiven. And that's crazy. What about all these people who worked 2 jobs for years to pay for their college choice to attend an expensive school? Or all of those people who decided to go to a cheaper school, which they could pay for out of pocket? Will they receive any money? No. How about all those people who didn't go to college at all, but they contribute significantly to our communities with jobs in public service and in the trades? Will there be some sort of payment to them? No. Okay, what about private student loans? Will these be eligible for government forgiveness too? Nope. Look, I hear both sides of the argument, but I'd like to share my thoughts here and some ideas on how to ease the burden of student loans without widespread forgiveness. Now, the first thing that Congress and President Biden should consider is to lower the federal student loan interest rate for an indefinite period of time. Right now, the extension of 0% interest on student loans is great for those who are trying to get out from under their loans. But if interest rates rise back up to 4.5 to 6.8% or more at the end of the year, it just makes it even more difficult to pay off your loans. And I get it that thousands of you, including myself, have paid down student loans without the luxury of a 0% interest rate. But if you're looking for a meaningful way to help borrowers without widespread forgiveness, that's one place to start. Personally, I like this idea of lowering the student loan interest rate across the board to something reasonable like 1 to 2% instead of the ridiculous 5 to 6% or more. Obviously, the 0% provision is great, but long-term, keeping student loan rates around 6% is just ridiculous in these times of low interest and inflation. Now, the second idea that I'd like to see is to allow borrowers a full tax deduction for student loan payments. Again, I know that borrowers in the past didn't have the luxury of pre-tax student loan payments, and I've paid thousands of dollars of student loans off without so much as a student loan interest deduction myself, but the problem with the current $2,500 student loan interest deduction is that many borrowers, especially a lot of the physical therapist viewers on this channel who earn $70,000 to $80,000 a year, they don't qualify for the deduction. So I'm just suggesting that something beyond the student loan interest deduction. My thought is that taxpayers should be allowed to make a pre-tax payment towards their student loan balance. And maybe this is a short-term provision to encourage borrowers to get out from under their student loans. Fine, but I'll give you an example here. Let's say there's a physical therapist who earns $70,000 a year with their day job, and they have annual living expenses of about $45,000. After they've paid their federal, state, and their FICA taxes of around $17,000 on their income, they're left with about $8,000 extra to put onto their student loans. That's not bad, but say they want to get rid of their student loans even faster, so they get a weekend job earning an extra $30,000 for the year. But after taxes, that additional $30,000 earned only amounts to about $23,000 that they can apply towards their student loans because, well, of our marginal tax system. So instead of motivating people to wait around for hoping that their loans will be forgiven, how about we just incentivize them to pay off their debts by giving them a little tax break right now? I think it can go a long way to help these folks really get out from under the burden of student loans, but that's just my thoughts. I'm curious to hear what you think about student loan forgiveness, so let me know in the comments. Should the government forgive $10,000, $50,000, $100,000 or more, or zero? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any of these videos or follow-ups on this conversation. I appreciate you, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.